In a quiet suburban house, a father's word once meant everything. One lie from a sister shattered that trust forever. A teenage girl left standing alone under the harsh lights of a bus station, suitcase at her feet, watching the family car disappear into the night. Years later, the same father would stand in that same station, searching for the daughter he abandoned, only to discover the truth too late. This is the story of a betrayal that rewrote a family, of a girl forced to rebuild herself from nothing, and of a regret that arrived long after the damage was done. What happens when the person who should protect you chooses the lie instead? What happens when the one left behind refuses to stay broken? I was 16 the night my father left me at the bus station. He did not look back. He did not ask if I had money or a place to go. He simply believed my sister's carefully crafted story, packed my bags himself, and drove away while I stood under the fluorescent lights with a single suitcase and a heart that felt like it had been cut open. I did not cry then. The tears came later, in the cold of a stranger's couch and the silence of nights when no one came looking. That moment became the hinge on which the rest of my life turned. Everything before it belonged to a girl who still believed her family would choose her. Everything after belonged to the woman who learned that some wounds never fully close, and some regrets arrived too late to matter. My name is Elena Vargas, and for the first 16 years of my life, I lived in a modest two-story house on Maple Street in a town small enough that everyone knew everyone's business. My father, Miguel, worked long shifts at the warehouse. My mother had died when I was 9, taken by a sudden illness that left the house quieter than it should have been. After that, my older sister Camila, 3 years my senior, became the one who filled the space our mother had left. She was beautiful in the way that drew attention without effort, dark eyes, a quick smile, the kind of presence that made people lean in when she spoke. I was quieter, bookish, more likely to disappear into a novel than to hold court at the kitchen table. We were different, but for a long time I believed that difference did not matter. We were sisters. We were all each other had left of our mother. The cracks began small. Camila had always been the favorite in subtle ways. When our father came home exhausted, it was her stories that made him laugh. When money was tight, it was her school events that received the extra dollars. I told myself it was because she was older, more outgoing. I told myself love was not a finite resource. I was wrong. By the time I turned 15, Camila had begun dating a boy named Derek who lived 2 towns over. He was older, drove a car that looked expensive for a high school student, and carried himself with the easy arrogance of someone who had never been told no. Our father disliked him on sight. There were arguments about curfews, about the smell of cigarette smoke on Camila's clothes, about the way Derek looked at me when he thought no one was watching. I stayed out of it. I had my own friends, my own small world of library hours and after-school shifts at the local diner. I did not want the drama. Then the lies started. It began with missing money from our father's wallet. Small amounts at first, $20 here, $50 there. He would notice, frown, ask if either of us had borrowed it. Camila always had an answer ready. She needed it for school supplies. She had lent it to a friend who would pay her back. Once she even suggested that I might have taken it without realizing, because I was always so distracted with my books. I laughed it off. I had never stolen a thing in my life. Our father believed her. He always did. The accusations grew. A family heirloom necklace. Our mother's, the only piece of jewelry she had left us, disappeared from Camila's jewelry box. She claimed I had borrowed it without asking and lost it. I had never even opened that box. When I said so, Camila cried and said I was jealous of her, that I had always resented how close she and our father were. Our father looked at me with something new in his eyes, doubt. That look hurt more than any accusation. I tried to defend myself. I showed him my bank statements from the diner job. I offered to help search the house. I even suggested we call the police if something valuable was missing. Camila twisted every attempt. She said I was trying to make her look bad. She said I was the one who had changed after our mother died, that I had become distant and secretive. Our father, worn down by long hours and the quiet grief that never fully left him, began to side with her more often than not. I started keeping my bedroom door locked. I started eating dinners in silence. The final lie was the one that broke everything. It was a Friday night in late autumn. I had stayed late at the library finishing finishing a research paper. When I got home, the house was dark except for the kitchen light. Camila was waiting at the table, eyes red, a story already prepared. She told our father that I had been seeing Derek behind her back, that I had met him at the bus station after school, that she had found messages on his phone, messages I had supposedly sent, full of the kind of words that would make any father's blood run cold. She claimed I had threatened to tell our father about their relationship if Derek did not leave her for me. She produced screenshots, carefully edited, with my name attached to numbers that were not mine. She claimed she had confronted me earlier that day and that I had laughed and said I would ruin her life the way she had always tried to ruin mine. None of it was true. I had never spoken to Derek alone. I had never sent those messages. I had never wanted anything to do with him. But the evidence looked real enough, and Camila's tears looked real enough. And our father's exhaustion made him choose the path of least resistance. He called me into the kitchen, the calm of someone who had already won. That night, he packed a suitcase for me. Not roughly, not with anger, but with the slow, deliberate movements of a man who had decided something final. He put in clothes, a few books, the small amount of cash I had saved from the diner. He did not pack photographs. He did not pack the sweater our mother had knitted. He drove me to the bus station on the edge of town, the one that connected to the larger city an hour away. The station was nearly empty. A few travelers waited under the harsh lights. The air smelled of exhaust and old coffee. He parked the car but did not turn off the engine. "You need time to think about what you have done," he said. "Your sister needs space. I cannot have this under my roof right now." He handed me a bus ticket to the city and the address of a distant cousin I had met once when I was 12. "She will take you in for a while. Call when you are ready to apologize." I stood on the concrete with the suitcase at my feet and watched the taillights of his car disappear. He did not wave. He did not look in the rearview mirror. The night was cold. The ticket in my hand felt like a sentence. I did not go to the cousin. I had no intention of burdening a near stranger with a story that made me sound like a liar. Instead, I spent the first night on a bench inside the station, dozing in short, uneasy stretches while the cleaning crew swept around me. In the morning, I used the last of my cash to buy a cheaper ticket farther into the city, to a neighborhood where no one knew my name. I found a shelter that took in teenagers without questions. I found a job washing dishes in the back of a diner that stayed open late. I learned how to stretch a single meal across a day. I learned how to sleep with one eye open. The first weeks were the hardest. I checked my phone constantly, waiting for a message that never came. I imagined my father realizing the truth, driving back to the station, searching the city for me. I imagined Camila confessing in a moment of guilt. Neither happened. The silence stretched into months. Winter came. The shelter filled with people whose stories were worse than mine, and somehow that made my own pain feel smaller and sharper at the same time. I stopped checking the phone. I sold it for a cheaper model that could not be tracked. I cut my hair short. I stopped using my last name. Elena Vargas became simply Elena, a girl who worked doubles and saved every spare dollar in a coffee can under her mattress. I enrolled in night classes at a community college when I turned 17, paying with cash and the determination of someone who had nothing left to lose. I studied until my eyes burned. I worked until my hands cracked. I built a life that required no one else's permission. Years passed. I moved from the shelter to a shared apartment with 2 other girls who asked few questions. I graduated with an associate degree and found a better job in an office that did not smell of grease. I kept my head down. I did not date. I did not make close friends. Trust was a currency I could no longer afford. At night, I sometimes dreamed of the bus station, of the fluorescent lights, of the suitcase, of my father's back as he walked away. I would wake with my heart racing and the old anger sitting heavy in my chest. I learned to breathe through it. I learned to use it as fuel. I was 22 when the first crack in Camila's story appeared. By then, I had a small studio apartment of my own and a job that paid enough for groceries without counting every coin. One evening, a message arrived from an unknown number. It was Derek. He had found me through an old mutual acquaintance from high school. His message was short and careful. He had heard what Camila had done. He wanted to talk. He said he had never sent those messages, never received them from me. He said Camila had used his phone while he slept, had fabricated the conversation, had staged the entire confrontation. He said he had broken up with her months later when he discovered other lies. days, but by then I was already gone and he had not known how to find me. I did not answer right away. Part of me wanted to delete the message and pretend it had never arrived. Another part, the part that still carried the weight of that night at the bus station, needed to know every detail. We met in a public park on a Saturday afternoon. Derek looked older, thinner, the arrogance worn down by time. He brought screenshots of his own, real ones this time, showing the timestamps and the way the fabricated messages had been created. He apologized for not speaking up sooner. He said he had been afraid of our father's temper, afraid of becoming involved in a family war he had never meant to start. I listened. I did not forgive him, but I did not need to. The truth was enough. With the evidence in hand, I made a decision. I would not confront Camila. I would not storm back into the house on Maple Street and demand justice. Instead, I would wait. I would let the truth find its own way home. I hired a private investigator with money I had saved over years of careful living. He confirmed what Derek had said and uncovered more. Camila had been stealing from our father for years, using the missing money to fund a lifestyle she could not otherwise afford. The necklace had been sold online under an account linked to her email. The lies about me had been a convenient way to remove the one person who might have noticed the pattern. I sent the file to our father anonymously at first, a thick envelope with copies of everything, no return address. I imagined him opening it at the kitchen table, the same table where he had once chosen Camila's tears over my truth. I imagined the moment the pieces fell into place. I did not expect a response. For weeks there was none. Then the calls began. They came from numbers I did not recognize. Voicemails in my father's voice, rough with something that might have been regret. He said he had found the envelope. He said he had confronted Camila. He said she had denied everything until the evidence made denial impossible. He said he had thrown her out of the house. He said he had driven to the bus station every weekend for a month, hoping somehow I would still be there. He said he was sorry. He said he had been wrong. He said he wanted to see me. I did not answer the first 10 calls. On the 11th, I picked up. His voice was older than I remembered. The warehouse years had taken their toll. He spoke carefully, as if each word might break something fragile. He asked if I was safe. He asked if I needed anything. He asked if I would meet him. I said I would think about it. I hung up before the conversation could turn into something I was not ready to carry. We met 3 weeks later at a diner halfway between the city and the town where I had grown up. He looked smaller than the man who had left me at the station. His hair was thinner. His hands shook slightly when he stirred his coffee. He did not try to hug me. He sat across from me and told the story from his side, the exhaustion, the grief that never left, the way Camila's lies had fitted so neatly into the spaces left by our mother's absence. He said he had wanted to believe the best of at least one of his daughters. He said he had chosen poorly. I listened. I did not interrupt. When he finished, I told him my story in the same measured way. The shelter, the nights on the bench, the years of building a life that did not depend on anyone's belief in me. I did not raise my voice. I did not demand apologies beyond the ones he had already offered. I simply laid the truth between us like a document neither of us could ignore. He cried. It was the first time I had seen him cry since our mother's funeral. The sound was quiet and broken. I did not reach for his hand. Some distances cannot be closed with a single conversation. In the months that followed, we spoke occasionally. He sold the house on Maple Street. He moved into a smaller place closer to the city. Camila had disappeared into her own life of temporary apartments and temporary relationships. I did not seek her out. The investigator's file had been enough. Revenge, I learned, was a colder comfort than people claimed. The real work was in the quiet rebuilding of a self that no longer needed anyone's validation. I finished my degree. I took a job that paid well enough to afford a small house with a garden. I planted tomatoes the way our mother once had. I kept the coffee can of emergency cash even when I no longer needed it. Some habits from those first years at the bus station never fully left me. On the 5th anniversary of the night my father left me there, I drove back to the station alone. It looked smaller than I remembered. The fluorescent lights still hummed. The benches were the same hard plastic. I sat for a long time with my hands in my lap, watching the buses come and go. No one left a teenager with a suitcase that night. The world had moved on. I had moved on with it. My father found me there by chance. He had formed a habit of driving past on difficult days, as if the place itself might still hold some answer. He parked and walked over slowly, as if afraid I might vanish. We sat side by side without speaking for nearly an hour. When he finally spoke, it was only to say that he regretted every mile of that drive away from me. I told him I knew. I told him regret was a beginning, not an ending. We watched a bus pull away into the dark, its its taillights fading the way his once had. I do not know if we will ever be the family we might have been if the lie had never been told. Some fractures remain visible even after the bone has set, but I no longer wake with the weight of that night pressing on my chest. I no longer measure my worth by whether the people who should have protected me chose to believe me. I built a life from the pieces they left behind, and that life is mine. The bus station is still there. The fluorescent lights still hum, but the girl who stood under them with a single suitcase is gone. In her place is a woman who learned that being left behind does not mean staying lost. It means learning how to walk forward on your own, one careful step at a time, until the road becomes something you chose rather than something that was forced upon you. And if my father still drives past on difficult nights, if he still carries the weight of a decision he can never fully undo, then that is his road to walk. I have already walked mine. I have already arrived. If this story reached you in a place where trust feels fragile, know that you are not alone in the rebuilding. The ones who leave us at the station do not get to decide how the journey ends. That choice remains ours. Subscribe if you want more stories of the ones who refuse to stay broken. Share this if someone in your life needs to hear that survival is not the same as silence. The road after the bus station is long, but it belongs to the one who keeps walking. Thank you for listening. Until the next story.